She never truly loved you. Does that sound offensive, like a gratuitous provocation? Maybe it's a cry that can break through the wall of illusions and deeply touch something you've always suspected but feared to admit. How many times have you asked yourself, in the absolute silence of sleepless nights, why did she pull away? Was it all a lie? Or worse, is the fault in me? What you're about to hear today isn't easy comfort, nor sweet promises that every love is pure or that you just need to try one more time. No, today, the truth will break you down, only to rebuild you afterward. Before we go on, take a deep breath. What you're about to discover might shake what you believe about love, about women, and especially about yourself. If this video resonates with you, if any story here seems familiar, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. We need to talk about what no one dares to open up about. Your experience and reflection can enlighten others who never had the courage to look in these mirrors. She never truly loved you. Let that phrase echo. It's not a judgment. It's an invitation, a call to dive deep. Are you willing to face the shadows of love? Are you ready to abandon fantasy and see the hidden gears of feelings? Get ready. What comes next isn't for the faint of heart. Behind this provocation, there's science, history, and a deep look at the human being. It's not guesswork nor spite. It's pure psychology. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe not. Carl Jung, one of the most respected thinkers on the human psyche, dedicated his life to unraveling the mysteries hidden behind people's actions and emotions. Jung challenges us to look beyond the surface, to dive into the inner worlds where wounds and secret desires form, especially in relationships. What Jung teaches us is shocking to many. Love, especially that expressed in a feminine way, doesn't always come from completeness or conscious choice, but often is the result of invisible cracks, secret traumas, deep complexes. There's no magic. There's history. There are layers that overlap, masks that are molded over years to hide old fears, suffocating insecurities. Know all the theories, master all the techniques, but as you touch a human soul, be just another human soul, Carl Jung. Have you ever noticed this? That feeling that something doesn't quite fit, even if everything seems perfect. Jung explains, a large part of feelings are automatic responses from the unconscious. Often, what we call love is in fact a desperate attempt to fill an old void, and instead of union, it only creates more distance and pain. Have you ever lived or witnessed stories like this? Relationships where the more you try, the more everything slips through your fingers? Jung isn't here to condemn. He comes to reveal, to demystify, to give us tools and help us understand why. So often, repeating patterns is so irresistible. Depth psychology unearths the root of behaviors, and the root is never obvious. Jung draws attention to archetypes, personas, the shadow, complexes, hidden elements that, like anonymous directors, guide the script of your life, often without you realizing it. Get ready. What you're about to discover today might explain that no that hurt too much, the unexpected disappearance, the icy indifference, or even that overwhelming passion that turned into smoke. Science is on your side. Knowledge is your new armor. The pain of abandonment, the knot in your chest in the face of inexplicable rejection, permanent distrust, even when everything seems fine, relationships based on emotional games where love seems conditional. She only opens up when she wants something. She distances herself whenever you get close. Is it a coincidence? Is it your fault? Have you ever heard or witnessed phrases like, she plays hard to get, but never truly commits? You realize she controls, manipulates, evades. She says she loves you, but you never feel secure. Endless tests, she invents obstacles, asks for more proof, is never satisfied. Situations like these are the daily reality for millions of people. Maybe you've never had the courage to admit it, but you've felt it. The woman who doesn't value you, who seems to play with your feelings, who does everything not to show vulnerability. And yet you insist, try, adapt, hoping that one day she'll express the longed-for love. The truth, according to Jung and the greatest scholars of the psyche, is that behind these behaviors, there's rarely conscious cruelty. Most of the time it's pain, old pain, masked as indifference, autonomy, or self-sufficiency. They are walls built around the heart, constructed with bricks of disappointment, past traumas, distorted learnings. Imagine the strength of a self-preservation instinct capable of transforming affection into suspicion, desire into constant vigilance, touch into threat. For some, loving is opening doors to an abyss. For others, it's the hope that someone will finally accept their hidden demons. And for so many women, it's this eternal dance between allowing themselves to feel and protecting themselves from suffering. Think for a moment, how many of your relationships or passions have shipwrecked, not due to lack of feeling, but due to an endless power game, difficulties in trusting, an invisible battle that seemed to have no end? You probably only saw the tip of an iceberg. It's time to dive deep. Now let's tear back the veil. What makes up this feminine psyche that so often hurts and hurts itself in love? Jung introduces us to universal archetypes. These are models, unconscious images that all people carry and that manifest as internal characters. Some of them dominate the stage when it comes to feminine romantic relationships, especially when there are deep wounds. Next, we're going to unravel the main archetypes, the patterns, the masks that predominate in how some women love, or rather protect themselves from loving. Prepare to recognize yourself, to understand someone who marked your life, or perhaps to never again make the same mistakes. In Jung, the animus is the masculine energy in the feminine soul. When healthy, it's a source of strength, clarity, and action. But when wounded, it causes distrust, hostility, constant competition with the masculine. Have you ever dealt with women who see every attitude of yours as a challenge, a threat, and feel, often without realizing it, the need to prove autonomy? Usually behind rigidity dwells a fragmented animus. Past relationships, and even with masculine figures in childhood, leave scars. And this pain manifests in criticism, disputes, disdain. Loving in this scenario becomes a battlefield. There's no surrender, only resistance. The shadow, according to Jung, is the unacceptable side of oneself that each person hides, sometimes even from themselves. In the wounded feminine psyche, the shadow doubles. There's what she doesn't accept in herself and what she rejects in the other. That's why you might notice disproportionate reactions, projections, unjustified attacks. Often she reacts to what she fears finding within herself by projecting it onto her partner. You're weak. You're not trustworthy. But deep down, it speaks of her own fear of vulnerability or betrayal, of how fragile she herself once was and can no longer bear to relive that. This complex is powerful and invisible. If the woman had a difficult, oppressive, or invasive relationship with the maternal figure, she carries that weight into adulthood. The reflection? Excessive neediness or exaggerated self-control, difficulty trusting, or a tendency to put herself in the position of the partner's mother, controlling, demanding, molding. Dependency bonds can form, followed by rejection. No one is enough to complete me. Love here hurts because it revives old pains, and the partner becomes, without realizing it, an adversary in these internal battles. The persona is the face the woman shows to the world, charming, powerful, independent. However, often behind this mask is a terrified child fearing rejection, hungry for affection, longing for recognition. She seduces, enchants, pushes away, manipulates, not out of malice, but as a survival strategy. When the partner only believes in the persona, they get frustrated. They expect pure love, they receive a performance. When they try to go beyond, they find resistance, coldness. Only those brave enough to collect the tears behind the smile understand the price of this mask. If so far any of these descriptions have touched you, don't hide. Speak in the comments. Have you ever seen yourself in any of these archetypes? Felt like you've lived or are living stories like this? Like and share this video to help others understand that suffering often has an explanation and that self-knowledge can liberate. Together, we can break this cycle. Imagine a woman whose soul is like an old castle, built among mountains of memories and past storms. This castle is grand, but it has locked doors and windows protected by invisible bars. Behind its walls, there's an emotional fortress, built brick by brick, that serves to house secrets, fears, and shadows. What seems like indifference or coldness to you is, in fact, a wall being erected to prevent a new attack on those sensitive points pressed by life. In this fortress, each mask she wears is a shield. The persona she shows to the world and to a potential partner functions as the shining armor of a solitary knight, shining on the outside but empty on the inside. She proves her strength, her autonomy, her capacity to survive. But inside, In the closed chambers, there's a woman who sometimes cries in silence, lost within her own shadow. This shadow that represents everything she doesn't allow herself to be. When this shadow emerges, it's not to attack without reason, but as silent revenge for ignored wounds, buried rejections, and unrecognized traumas. She is a prisoner of her own psyche. Imagine a ballerina who dances for the audience, but who, while spinning on stage, is caught in invisible chains. These movements, sometimes subtly manipulative, sometimes cold and distant, are unconscious expressions of the internal struggle between the desire to love and the need for self-protection. Another powerful image, love as a river trying to flow through rocks. The flow of these waters symbolizes the feeling that wants to expand and connect, but deviates or even gets lost in the stones, which are the psychological wounds, fears, patterns. When a woman cannot love in an idealized way, it's as if the river encounters deep blockages that divert its current into winding paths. These metaphors are not just poetic illustrations. They function as maps for your understanding. Visualizing these concepts helps guide the mind through complex emotional territories, making it possible for you, the viewer, to feel the reality behind the behavior and remember that we are not dealing with a monster, but with someone struggling to save herself. Holding on to a truth as harsh as "she never truly loved you" can turn into weapons against those who hear these words. But this video wasn't made to judge, but to understand, to achieve empathy. Saying that feminine love is often a response to wounds doesn't mean she's bad. On the contrary, it humanizes more than any Hollywood romance has ever tried to do. There have been times when you felt you loved someone and even so that person hurt you, sometimes unintentionally. The truth is, hurting and being hurt is part of the brutal cycle of love. What differentiates a destructive cycle from a healing cycle is the awareness we can build about our own patterns and those of others. When we say that woman didn't love you in the ideal way, we're actually pointing out that her love is disfigured by pain, not that she's incapable of love. She can love, yes, but her love is a form of self-protection, a complex system of emotional defenses. This requires compassion because behind every difficult attitude is a fragile soul who chose, consciously or unconsciously, to protect herself at all costs. Loving someone often means living with the shadow of that love. It means understanding that the other person may not be able to give everything you desire because she herself is fighting internal demons. This understanding doesn't lessen the pain, but it changes how you face it, from defeat to learning. For many, the discomfort lies in accepting that love isn't always full and perfect. That's where the cycle of repeating mistakes and hurt spins. It's more comfortable to believe there was malice, that there was manipulation, that the other person was cold because they wanted to be. But embracing the idea that she was hurt, that she defended herself, that she needed walls and masks, that's opening the door to a new path. A path where instead of resentment, a real possibility of healing for both sides is born. Feeling empathy is a powerful way to disarm the cycle of suffering. When you stop judging and start to understand what's behind the behaviors, you gain the freedom to choose whether it's worth continuing, to forgive yourself for allowing yourself to suffer, and to recognize that the other person is also a reflection of their own invisible battles. But where do these wounds come from? Why do some women repeat patterns that seem to push them away from true love? The answer is rooted in behavioral psychology, in the deep mechanisms that govern human behavior. Jung showed us that much of what we do is guided by segments of the unconscious, where memories, complexes, and defenses are put into action to ensure our emotional survival. Childhood traumas, painful rejections, and experiences of abandonment are crystallized within the psyche, configuring what we call complexes. A complex acts like an automatic program that, when activated, triggers a series of invariable behaviors. For a woman with an abandonment complex, for example, any delay, any silence from her partner can be interpreted as a prelude to rejection, activating defenses like withdrawal, harshness, or even preemptive attacks to avoid being hurt first. According to Jungian-oriented psychology, our mind is divided into several parts, and the conscious ego isn't always the pilot of this ship. That's why you may have experienced situations where the woman seemed to act against herself or against you. even saying she wanted something different. This happens because the unconscious acts to preserve what it believes is necessary, even if logic and conscious love desire the opposite. Another fundamental concept is projection. Often what she accuses in her partner or repudiates isn't external, but shadows she herself rejects within herself. If she fears betrayal, she's probably already lived the pain of broken trust. If she accuses a lack of courage, perhaps she herself fears her own fear of exposure. In dealing with these themes, self-knowledge is like a lighthouse that illuminates these hidden regions. When she or you begins to perceive these defense mechanisms, she lets go of the illusion of control and guilt and chooses to act with more awareness. She can break the cycle of repeating suffering. This connection between behavior and psychology reveals that feminine love, far from being simple or ideal, is a territory full of invisible traps, but also a possibility of transformation for those willing to explore with courage. So far, we've delved deep into psychology, archetypes, and images that illustrate the complexity of feminine love marked by wounds. But perhaps you're wondering, how does this apply to my daily life? How do I identify these patterns in practice, in my relationships? That's why now, we're going to alternate between the theory you've absorbed and real-life situations that thousands experience. Imagine a typical date. He's anxious, ready to open his heart, plan surprises, wants to connect. She, however, seems distant, alert. When he tries to get closer, to test vulnerabilities, she pulls back. This attitude of hers isn't a whim, nor a desire to do harm. It's a mechanism to avoid reliving a deep wound, an internal fear that prevents her from letting go. What you see is a wounded animus acting as an emotional anti-fraud system, an unconscious alert for potential harm. Another scenario, an argument where she reacts harshly, seemingly trying to gain control of the situation. Looking closer, we perceive the projected shadow, that internalized part that feels threatened, fighting against the abandonment it has already suffered. The partner might interpret this reaction as manipulation, while for her, it's a dance of self-protection. It's as if the shadow is a prisoner trying to avoid being captured again. She might also play the victim persona, demanding attention and resentment. The emotional game seems confusing, but in fact it's an attempt to be seen, understood, even if in a distorted way. The maternal complex can be observed here in the expectation that the partner will act as the maternal figure she didn't have, or as a substitute for what's missing. Every relationship brings these small tests, these daily choices between opening the castle door or reinforcing its barriers. Seeing the psychological dynamic behind these situations helps transform frustration into understanding. It's not about accepting everything, but about recognizing that often the resistance isn't against you. It's against an old and painful internal story. You might ask, how should I act then? The answer isn't simple, but it begins with practicing emotional awareness. Instead of reacting to her behavior, you can pause, investigate what wounds might be activated there. By becoming an empathetic observer of internal dramas, it's possible to choose less impulsive and more constructive reactions. Therefore, the alternation between theory and practice is essential to transform knowledge into wisdom. This is the bridge that links psychological understanding to real human experience, allowing you to better deal with what your relationship, often painfully, mirrors. We've reached a crucial point in the journey. What about you? What do these stories reveal about your way of loving? Are you loving the image you created of her, or her true self, with all her shadows, wounds, and complexities? This is fundamental. How many times have you deluded yourself with the persona, that perfect social mask, and ignored the clear signs of the emotional fortress? How many emotional games have you accepted as love or proof of affection when they were, in fact, defense mechanisms? Ask yourself, have you been a passive spectator or a conscious participant in the dynamics of wounded love? Have you caught yourself repeating the same pattern, choosing women who, consciously or unconsciously, reflect traumas you carry? Or do you protect yourself so much with your own shadows, the fear of committing, the insecurity with rejection, that you end up reinforcing cycles of suffering? Reflecting on these questions isn't easy, but it's vital. The first step towards change is in recognition, and in the courage to look within. For example, If you notice a tendency to seek emotionally unavailable partners, ask yourself, what fear is behind that choice? Loneliness, vulnerability, or the need to repeat the story to try deep down a different outcome? Self-reflection allows you to free yourself from the role of victim or tormentor and take control of your relationships. Loving isn't just feeling, it's also choosing, and that requires awareness of your own patterns, shadows, and complexes. For this reflection to truly happen, you can write about your experiences, talk to trusted people, seek psychological support if necessary. True love, the one that heals, goes through this internal revolution, where emotion and reason walk side by side. So I invite you now to pause and think, what did your last relationship teach you about who you are and about who you truly want by your side? Are you willing to break cycles, or will you repeat the same painful scripts? You've come this far because you're looking for answers, and that shows strength, not weakness. Now don't let this moment of awareness be just a fleeting glimpse. Transforming a deep understanding of feminine love and its wounds into concrete action is what can truly change your life. If you felt this video opened doors to a new perspective, if you want to go further, to better understand yourself, the women you love, and finally break the cycle of suffering, I've prepared something special for you. There's a path to self-knowledge focused on awakening the purpose of conscious love, a method that helps unravel hidden patterns, strengthen emotional intelligence, and build relationships based on genuine respect and mutual healing. You can find this support in an exclusive ebook I created specifically for people like you who want to break free from the invisible shackles of the past and love with more awareness. The link is in the description of this video. Download it, dive into the content, and share your discoveries. The process of change is gradual but real, and it begins with one step: the decision to no longer accept repeating stories that only bring pain. If you liked the video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next deep content on psychology, behavior, and relationships, and share it with friends who need to hear this message. Your comment is also very important. Tell your story, ask questions, reflect with the community. Remember, loving isn't simple, but it can be lighter when we understand what guides our hearts. And understanding is the first step to liberation. Thank you for being here, for wanting to know yourself deeper. See you in the next video, where we'll continue this journey of self-discovery and transformation.